Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. Today we're continuing on the Brood Coven and I am painting up the Magus. Now he's already been assembled up to the point of the way of getting him painting and primed with my black car primer. And he has, he's fully assembled except for his head and his front dress thingy. And these are all the paints I used for the model. The box art has him be very plain and simple, so I am going to go a bit big. So with Corn Red, Mephiston Red, Evil Sun Scarlet, and Troll Slayer Orange, we're going to start with what we usually would do, the largest part of the model, which is his robe. So we're going to start with a base layer of Corn Red all over. Then we're going to do a 1-to-1-ish of Corn Red and Mephiston Red, make sure it's watered down well, and basically cover like 99% of everything except the deepest, darkest recesses with the Corn Red. And then we're going to take pure Mephiston Red and we're going to apply it on pretty much like 90% of the whole model. Pretty much everything except for the deepest, darkest recesses that'll have the Corn Red mix in. And then with a 1-to-1-ish mix of Mephiston Red and Evil Sun Scarlet, I started to add like texture. I did a bunch of horizontal lines all the way through. The only thing I didn't do is I didn't do it in the deepest crevices of his robes. Looking back, I probably should have done it, but it's okay. And so essentially all I do is I just do horizontal lines all over from top to bottom. On his arms though, I did them vertical, just to go with like the direction of his arms and stuff. And then I continue to do the same thing again with Evil Sun Scarlet, make sure you water it down well enough, and basically do horizontal lines. Now we're not trying to highlight the previous lines, we're just doing them randomly again, like from top to bottom. And this layering texture, you can see the previous layer, you can see the highlights of this layer and such. Then we're going to take the Evil Sun Scarlet and Troll Slayer Orange, we're going to mix them together 1-to-1-ish, and we're going to do more horizontal lines all over. But we're also going to do a focus on the tops of the folds, like some straight lines along the top edges and stuff, just to give like a point of focus. So a bunch of these all throughout. And then with pure Troll Slayer Orange, we're basically doing it again, somewhat covering up what we did before, somewhat not. That's where texture's just built up this way through layers. And then I actually take a new paint, the Troll Slayer Orange and Fire Dragon Bright. That's not new, but I've never used it. 1-to-1-ish mix, and I basically paint straight lines along the edges of his folds and just do some more feathering, much lighter though, much lighter. And then I finish with pure Fire Dragon Bright on the most raised edges and a little bit of feathering here and there. Very little of this is just to catch the eye. And then finally, I do tone it down a bit by going back with Corn Red again, water down into a very watered down wash. More like I got some paint in my water. And then I apply a layer all over to tie it together, all the colors together, help them blend together better. Yeah, you can skip this step, but it's what I do. Alright, with Dawnstone, Administrative Gray, Gray Seer, and Abaddon Black, we're going to paint the armor, gray head stuff, yeah, whatever. So, I'm going to do a base layer of Dawnstone all over. Now, then, I'm going to try something different. Sort of a highlight-ish like thing, and so then I go with Administrative Gray, and basically I paint all the edges with it. I paint the center parts of the ribbed areas, if that makes sense. Then I do the same thing with Gray Seer. I paint all the highlight edges, the sharp points, the tops of his fancy neck hat guard thingy, and of course the center tops of each of the ribbings. And then what I do is I take Abaddon Black and I water it down tremendously, and then I apply a few layers of it, and it adds a little bit of shading here and there, fills the ribs and stuff. Then I add, make the wash a bit thicker, and then I apply it into the ribs itself. I wanted to try to, I didn't want to use the Nuln Oil. It didn't seem to do too well in the last one, so I thought that this would do better. And yeah, it turned out well. I had to do some re-highlighting with the Gray Seer on the most raised edges and stuff and points, but armor turned out pretty good and decent. Alright, with Thunderhawk Blue and Sons of Horus Green, we're going to paint the inside of his sash thing. So both sides, front and back, are going to have Thunderhawk Blue as their base. Then I'm going to take Sons of Horus Green, I'm going to water it down a lot, and I'm going to apply a few layers of it. And essentially what this is going to do is mostly waste time. I kind of wanted to make like the insides like brighter, and the edges be like towards more of the blue. Then I took a very thin wash of Thunderhawk Blue and applied it on side to sort of refix things. Then I took Sons of Horus Green, still watered down a lot, but not a wash, and applied it only in like the direct center. And it was a waste of time. It's not bad, but it's just meh. Alright, with Mournfang Brown, Agrax Earthshade, and XV88, I'm just doing the standard on his leather. So he has a gun holster, so Mournfang Brown base, pure Agrax Earthshade on it, and then Mournfang Brown highlighting, basically covering 80% of everything. XV88 mixed with Mournfang Brown, sort of a 1-to-1-ish mix, painting the edges of it, and a few cross sections here and there to add some texture, and then a few dots of XV88 on the corners, the sharper corners of the gun holster, and that's about it. And also, of course, Mournfang Brown on a few of the straps, that's all. Alright, with Cadian Flesh Tone and Padded Witch Flesh, we're just going to paint the face, and it's going to turn out pretty well. So, base layer, Cadian Flesh Tone all over. Then I'm going to take Cadian Flesh Tone, I'm going to mix a little bit of Padded Witch Flesh in it, and with the new fine red sable brushes, I think, or just a sable brush, I paint pretty much 90% of everything, his eyebrows, jawline, top of his head. The top of his head and like going towards the back of his skull is like I feathered it in to help blend in a bit. And then I repeat the process again, but I take some Cadian Flesh Tone, I water it down heavily, apply it all over to sort of smooth out the blends a bit, because it looked a little too much. Then I go back to Cadian Flesh Tone, Padded Witch Flesh, re-highlight it again, and then I add more Padded Witch Flesh in to the Cadian Flesh Tone mix, and then highlight the fine, high eyebrows, edges, stuff like that, whatever the things on his forehead are, and of course feathering the top of his skull and back. And then finally I took pure Padded Witch Flesh and painted the most raised edges of like his skull, angular eyes, stuff like that, and his vein things that he has on the side of his head. Yeah. And with a bit of Genestealer Purple, I water it down heavily and apply it to the back of his neck, around his jawline and his forehead and stuff to add some pink fleshy color to it. Probably should have done this in the other steps as well so I could blend them in better, but I went a little bit afterwards and blended them in. Alright, now with Xerxes Purple, Genestealer Purple, and Padded Witch Flesh, I'm going to show you nothing, because I'm doing the fine details of his face and there's no way I can do this on camera at all without screwing it up. So, because I have this guy right next to my face. So basically, here's what I did. Took Xerxes Purple, used it to fill in his mouth, and to paint this little gem that he has for an earring on his right. Then with Genestealer Purple, I water it down a bit, quite a lot, and fill in his eye sockets with a little bit of it, his center of his forehead and his cheekbones under him with it to add some more color. And then I took the Padded Witch Flesh and I used it to make his eyes. And I didn't mention this, but I have a 0.25mm micro pen, and I use it to do his irises, eyeballs, whatever. And yeah, Oh, and I also use the Pallid Witch Flesh and a very fine of the fine sable brushes do his teeth, which clearly worked, so the brushes did very well. Alright, with Abaddon Black, Dawnstone, Mephiston Red, and Evil Sun Scarlet, we're going to knock out some details. So what we're going to do first with Abaddon Black, we're going to use this as a base layer for our scabbard, and these, he has some cords and stuff that are not leather, but they go between, like these vials he has on his side, and on his little tassel thingies. We're going to start with that. Then with Dawnstone, we're going to highlight the cords and his scabbard. I'm going to take a watered down Dawnstone and just like stipple it over it to create like a random-ish pattern and highlight some of the edges, or just slosh some more of the wash on there. Yeah, no big deal. I'm not really focusing on it. Then with also with the Dawnstone, I'm going to use that and paint all the vials. A solid Dawnstone layer. Then with Mephiston Red, I'm just going to paint like halfway through them, the vials. It's sort of like a teardrop kind of ish, random-ish, just to show that like there's something in there, and then highlight what I painted with Mephiston Red with Evil Sun Scarlet, and that's just about it. Just a small detail, and it's going to be smoothed out a bit later. Alright, Iron Warriors and Duraluminum, which is just a very bright silver. We're going to paint his metals. So Iron Warrior goes on all his metals. His staff, his scepter, his little tube cord thingies around his neck and such, and yeah, that's pretty much it. Oh, and the tops of the vials. And then with Duraluminum, we're just going to highlight them. The scepter is the most intricate. We're just trying to put it on the most raised area flats on it. As far as his staff, I'm basically painting 4 lines on the 4... like north, south, east, west on the staff, just to add some shading and stuff. Yeah, and that's it. Alright, with Castellax Bronze, Retributor Armor, and I don't use a Liberator Gold yet, I skip that. So basically, I'm going to use the Castellax Bronze. He has these gold bracelet stuff on his right and left hand, or wrist. I apply this as a base layer there, and I use Retributor Armor as a base layer for the top-ish and bottom part of his staff, as well as his tassels, the front part of his tassels with Retributor Armor. Alright, with Seraphim Sephia and Liberator Gold, we're going to do more details on the metal. So basically, pure Seraphim on his little Genestealer Cult icons that he has on his tassels, as well as the bottom of his tassels and the gold parts of his staff, essentially, to add shade. Then with Liberator Gold and one of the sable brushes, the fine ones, I basically paint fine lines on the handles, or the parts of his staff that have gold up and down the lines. Works really well. That's a really good brush. And then I also use it to highlight the tassel parts, the solid parts of the color, and the edge of the gold with it, and works pretty well. Alright, with Pallid Witch Flesh, Daemonite Hide, and Xerxes Purple, we're going to paint the gems he has. He has them on his staff, front and back, center of his chest on the tassels, and his scabbard, and the little tassel Genestealer symbols on the bottom. So I'm going to do reverse highlighting, because it's easier. I'm not going to test the sable brushes to do this, because I just want to try it again. So basically, Pallid Witch Flesh mixed with a little bit of Daemonite Hide, cover all the gems. Then with pure Daemonite Hide, cover the, like 90% of the gems, all the way to the rims, mostly focusing on the bottom so that there is like a C on the top. That's the bright Pallid Witch Flesh color. Then with Xerxes Purple, I'm going to paint the center and bottom of this. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. And then I take the Pallid Witch Flesh and a tiny dot of it on the bright part of each of the gems. And that's it. They're so small, and it's going to blend together soon anyway. And then I assemble the model to its base and fully. Alright, with the Army Painter Anti-Shine Matte Varnish, that's a lie and false marketing, AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish, and Liquitex Gloss Varnish, we're gonna do the varnishes. Now, normally I would have done the varnishes and then go to the metals, but like there was a lot of stuff interwoven, and so I just wanted to focus on this. Now, I fixed up any mistakes or chips and stuff that occurred while painting it. There were some here and there, so I fixed them now. So the Anti-Shine Matte Varnish, I wanted to keep the sheen that his cloak had. I just liked it. So I applied this all over. It didn't cut it. It didn't work. Eventually I applied a layer of Ultra Matte Varnish over it that was a bit thinned down with water, and it kind of kept it. And then took Ultra Matte Varnish and went on all over his skin, on all his skin. And then I used the gloss varnish and I applied 2 layers of it with a little bit of water because I mixed a little bit of water because this Liquitex and AK Interactive is a bit pigmented, and if you add a little bit of water, it gets rid of it. Otherwise, your model will start to like have a white ghostly glaze on it, and I didn't want that. And so about 2 layers of the gloss varnish, and the gems are shiny, and it's really hard to tell like the straight hard colors apart. And yeah, that was pretty much it, and the model is done with a Mornfang brown base around, or ring around its base, because the asphalt look and stuff is so dark and stuff that I need the bright brown ring to sort of bring it up, accentuate it so that the base looks better. Because the asphalt is just like, it's what roads look like, what they should look like, and so I have to add a ton of damage and flavor to it. And that's the model. I made this a bit harder than it should have, a bit more. But, yeah, the model looks great, the robe looks great. The interesting things is that I didn't paint the folds of his robe, and that kind of made things interesting, because like he has these deep clear red parts where there's no folds and stuff, and I think it adds a little bit to his character. It's a deliberate choice. Some may like it, some may not. I mean, it's a style. It was easier to do to not paint something. But yeah, that turned out well. His skin is great. His face turned out pretty good. I wasn't able to get the deep, brightish pink that you see some on the box art that I get like on the Genestealer Cults foreheads and necks and stuff like that. I wasn't able to get that color right again. His tassels are okay. His staff turned out actually really great. His armor, this method with just using the Abaddon Black as a wash was pretty effective. Now the ribbing is pretty dark, but you can still see like the highlights somewhat very subtly in it, so it's still there. But this is a faster paint method than using the Nuln Oil, which seems to break down if it's watered down too much. It has issues, and it's definitely faster than using oils. The downside of using oil paints is that afterwards it takes a very long time, like 12 hours or so, to fully dry that you can apply more paint on without it like rushing off. So this was definitely a faster method, but for common troops I'm probably going to use oils. Yeah. And anyway, that's it for the second model in the Brood Coven. I went above and beyond. I actually don't know why GW literally has 2 different sculpts of the exact same model, but here we are. And yeah. So like the video if you like the video, share if you want to share, comment if you want to comment, and more to come.